Welcome to the Brisbane Property Podcast with your hosts Melinda and Scott Jennison.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this short episode and very special episode on a little update from Melinda and myself following the recent Cyclone Alfred in Brisbane.
Yes, we always want to bring the truth through our podcast, and there's been some sensationalised headlines once again off the back of Cyclone Alfred here in Brisbane, suggesting property values will fall up to 25 or 45%. Now, of course, we know that these are just clickbait headlines, and the truth is what we're going to share with you now. And this is our experience based on what we saw in the first weekend of open homes and auctions off the back of the weekend where everything really shut down while we braced for the impacts of what never was a cyclone but ended up being ex-Cyclone Alfred here in Brisbane.
So it's unusual. I do get an episode where it's about weather, and this one obviously a bit of different weather, but obviously for the people that weren't local here in Southeast Queensland, and I'll open it up to Southeast Queensland, yes, there was quite a heavy, it was cyclone sort of heavy weather, I guess. I think the brunt of the weather, and we've got to be careful, obviously, respectfully, there's people down south, and I think Gold Coast and a bit of northern New South Wales, they copped it. They copped a fair bit of wind and a bit of destruction down that way. They lost some power for days. Brisbane, I think, escaped pretty well. I think all in all, the Thursday was blue sky. It was amazing. It was quite weird. The Friday, a little bit more cloudy and a couple of showers and a little bit of wind. Saturday, the wind did pick up. We did get some good gusts of wind. Sunday, we got a lot of rain. And then following that, we just basically recovered from there. The low-lying areas in Brisbane, and remember, Brisbane is a river city. Okay, the low-lying areas did get water. And there was some isolated flooding and some flooding in some areas. Definitely not flooding like we had back in 2022.
Correct. Nor was it flooding like we experienced in the big flood event in 2011. So I think it's about being accurate in the information that is shared. And what we saw was a lot more, I guess, what's the word? It certainly wasn't the sensationalized sort of weather event that potentially people heard about on the news. And we were watching some episodes of the news during that period that the cyclone was happening, because there was no power outage where we live at all. And we were sort of suggesting that they were really trying to hype it up when outside the leaves on the trees were fairly still, and there was just not much happening at all. So what's happening in real estate now? I've had a number of interviews with media over the last 7 to 10 days asking for my input on what I expect will happen. Now, I know that I felt consumer confidence or buyer confidence would have just paused simply because buyers become a little bit unsure as to what impact this is likely to have. Now, remember, media can have a big impact on buyer sentiment. So when buyers then read those headlines, it can really impact on their confidence levels. That said, I have also made comments that I expect those lower lying areas that have been impacted again by floodwaters, demand will fall away for those properties. Remember, after each flood event, obviously these types of homes have a period where there is a cleanup period. Everybody bands in to help those people when they are in need. But obviously, the longer that the more time that passes between the flood event and normal living, the more people forget about what that impact is likely to be. And every home, there's going to be a price that someone's prepared to pay to take on that risk. But that risk for buying something that might be flood impact is going to be higher and more acute soon after a flood event. So the longer the time that passes, the less acute or the less impact that event might have on someone's decision to buy. There are flood maps, of course, that people can access the information available to help them assess whether that risk is going to be real and whether that risk is something that they're willing to put up with. I also said that because some of those homes that may have been impacted might decrease demand, that demand may shift to all of the other properties that are available. And remember, we are in a really tight supply market. So we still have the number of listings here in Brisbane that's travelling or sitting somewhere around 30% below the long-term average. So if we've got a concentration of buyers that shift to a smaller number of properties because we're eliminating those that were impacted, that can potentially put higher demand for those properties, causing price pressure. So we're going to see potentially this two-speed market. Now, what happened on the very first weekend, Scott, when we were out and about with our team, and we did saturate across the market here in Brisbane?
Yeah, it was something we did deliberately here at Streamline Property Buyers to help our listeners and to help the audience out there. On the weekend, if we weren't looking at actual properties or bidding in any auctions, because some auctions were pushed back from the weekend before, we made sure that we had our team out and about. So we saturated the market. We spread our team out everywhere. Obviously, clients come first, but then what we did is we did some market research for everyone. Now, there was one property, for example, that we went and looked at. I think it had 15 offers, was it?
Yeah, there were 60 groups lining up to get through that particular property. It was a blue chip townhouse location, actually in Wilston, north of Brisbane. More than 60 groups through the very first open home on a Saturday. More than 16 offers received. Offers closed that afternoon at 5 p.m. So that's an indication that demand for some product types is extremely high. We attended in-room auctions on Friday night, 11 auctions scheduled for a number of properties on the south side throughout Mount Gravatt East, Sunnybank Hills and Wishart. 8 of those properties sold and only 3 passed in. So that's a really strong clearance rate for those opportunities. And there was some really competitive bidding that we witnessed at that event.
Also another, I think there's a townhouse over at Morningside. Again, multiple offers. First open, multiple offers. I think they had 7 or 8 offers on that one. That one, which is interesting, the owners actually, because they had so many offers on the property, have actually decided now, instead of taking one of those offers, they've actually turned into an auction campaign. So instead of taking the offer, they've gone, look, we've had a lot of interest in it. We'll give everyone 2 more weeks and we'll actually go to auction. So there's a lot of demand, and there was a lot of people out and about on the ground looking at property, and people very interested in property. As Melinda mentioned, people possibly moving away from flood-affected areas and moving to other desirable areas where there's less risk.
And that auction clearance rate, preliminary clearance rates reported by CoreLogic for Brisbane showed Brisbane had the highest auction clearance rate out of all weekends throughout 2025, and that was in the weekend that just passed. So if you're wondering what the impact of Cyclone Alfred has been on the Brisbane market, based on our observations of saturating the market and being out and about on that first weekend, we certainly do not think that it's had any long-term impact whatsoever, certainly not on those homes that have not been impacted or those homes that are not in those lower lying areas that are flood impacted and can be discoverable on flood maps. So I hope that gives you some reassurance about the market.
The only last thing, for people to think about here, I'll get that out. No matter where you buy, you can be affected by natural disasters.
Of course.
Okay, it could be bushfires like they get in Victoria, in other areas as well. But as an example, bushfires, flooding, cyclones, there can be natural disasters. You have no control over that.
That's right. Even just this summer storm that comes through can be more destructive than what, some of these weather events that are made out to be bigger than they are.
Yeah, and we flooded in 22. Those people that are bought at the end of 2022, off the back end of that, I'm sure they've made pretty good money in property.
Certainly have here in Brisbane. Hope that's been a useful update. We just wanted to bring you a short, sharp view of what we are seeing in the market by being out and about on the ground post ex-tropical cyclone Alfred here in Brisbane.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Take care and bye for now.
Bye for now.